a lack of communication, and I apologized entirely for that, and for being late this morning. But my best intentions and being up at 6 o'clock and getting everything lined up and everything sorted out. So what I want to do is I want to talk to everybody a little bit about the difference between enrichment and mental stimulation, and to consider the individual needs of the donkey or donkeys if you've got several, and everybody sort of values the enrichment and what we can do, but I want to look at it in a slightly different way. And I want you to leave, as Chase did with the ones you saw at the Donkey Welfare Symposium, with some processes about evaluating the donkey's needs, because I think enrichment, people tend to think of it almost like donkeys are going to run around all day being super happy and doing lots of things and being so busy, and that's not really what enrichment's about. That we can look at the individual donkey. What does the actual donkey need to do? Now, what I'm hoping that we can do is that I'm going to need you to ask some questions in the Q&A or in the chat box, whatever you've got set up for the Zoom meeting, so that we can find them and just respond to them. This is very much an interactive session. Please also add any ideas or thoughts you've got to the chat box as well, if that's okay, Chase, you know, for them to score things, because what I found is so many people have good ideas that we tend to think is obvious. And when you put them down, people go, oh, okay, yeah, cool. I didn't think of that. So sharing those ideas is part of this session. Do the exercises. So you will need a pen, paper, crayons, whatever you choose to write with. And we will be going through a process that we can see. I'm going to share my screen. So hopefully we've got that coming up. And, you know, to get us warmed up, what I would like to see is a little bit of interaction on the chat box, please, just to say yes or no, who does any form of enrichment with their donkeys? If you are not familiar with the chat box, don't want to type, just put your thumb up or just nod or wave your hand, use one of the icons, that sort of thing. I'm just interested to know who's doing some enrichment already consciously. Ruth said yes, that's good. I want to know. I take them for outings. That's good. Yeah. That's a bit of enrichment, a small amount. Okay, cool. Who thinks their donkeys would enjoy more enrichment?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, Stacey, good. Yeah, put your thumbs up, put it in the chat box. You know, this is interactive. It's a little bit messy, but absolutely fine. Good. Yeah, happy to try different things. Fantastic. Do you struggle to be creative with enrichment, you know, and have time to do enrichment? Do you even have the right environment to do the right enrichment? You know, is actually thinking of what can I do now? I've done this for, you know, you found your task or the one or two things that you like. Is that a challenge?
See, did you want me to try something?
We're not muted.
Do you think it's difficult? Do you struggle with that sort of thing? Yes, I don't feel I know enough or I'm creative enough. Brilliant. Lucy, that's exactly what we're going to sort out today. We're going to work on that and give you some ideas and show you where you can get those ideas. And we're going to work on how that works. So I want to just take you through here a little bit about some of the mental stimulation versus enrichment ideas. And these are just a few ideas that we have here for enrichment. Let me just change that so I can see. Good. Okay. So, you know, some of the things that what you see almost inevitably in all of these pictures, the common factor is they are using their mouth or their nose to do something. Whether that's chewing logs, or this one is a banana hole. So these are holes drilled with bananas put in for the donkeys to get out. Toys, which is an easy one for people to do. This is scent, smell. So we'll talk a little bit about that. In terms of, I think this is paprika that they're putting out. So it's a novelty, the obvious food balls, things like that. Now, these are brilliant. What we want, though, is to look at environmental enrichment. So enrichment is about how do we manage the environment to create enrichment all the time. So here, someone's putting a sand pit. They've got some access to some British green grass, which is terribly bad for them. You know, have we got different gates? Have we got ways of changing the environment? How does that look? And immediately you begin to see the difference between enrichment and mental stimulation. We tend to talk about enrichment as in this previous, let me just see if I can go back. Oh, the previous one, but this is actually mental stimulation. We're providing stimulation of a particular type. Enrichment also includes things like changes of surface or area, the way we set up grazing, friends to play with, access to different environments, going for walks. One of you said in the chat box about, you know, I took my donkeys for a walk. Is that kind of enrichment? Yes, it is. Here you see a herb feeder. So there's pots of herbs that are growing, and there's a mesh there so that they can't actually just completely destroy the herbs. They have to take it a little bit at a time and they get a chance to grow back. And we can do that on this small scale, or you can do it on a big scale, and we'll talk about that also. One of the challenges is that a lot of our environment enrichment is much wider, has much more scope for environment, but the mental stimulation has problems because it's generally based around food. You know, it's around all the things that you saw in this early slide. Lots of food, things to eat. Now, even though these are good things, they're vegetables that are high in fiber, what it can lead to if we use too much enrichment is that obesity. Often it's consumed within 20 minutes and then it's gone for the rest of the day. Often people are using high sugar enrichment for their donkeys. Even if we're using carrots and apples, there's a certain amount of sugar in there that the donkey's taken on. It takes time to create. You know, you've got to think about it, right? I'm going to get my banana feeder out, get my banana, put it in, do all of that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of effort in creating it. It's not always suitable if you've got a large group of donkeys, especially if you're using food. You know, they're going to be fighting with each other and doing those sorts of aspects of behavior. And there's an expense. You've got to go out and buy stuff. You've got to build a lovely herb feeder like this. You might have to create some sort of toy. You've got to buy them. So it may not even reach the individual needs. Some of you, I'm sure, tell me if this is true in the chat box, but you've perhaps bought a toy.
By default, the audio is not
and then the toy, the donkey's taking no notice of it. I had someone email me this week to say their donkey didn't like the color of their new football that they'd had for Christmas. You know, they've been out, bought a leather football. They used to play with the old one. They thought, get a new football, play it, never touched it. Didn't like the color of it, apparently. So, you know, there's this hit and miss approach. You know, if you're getting a football for an older donkey, you probably won't be excited about it, but a younger donkey might. And we need to explore all those sorts of things of how we meet the individual needs of our donkeys. So, what I wanted to just point out, hopefully in this next slide, is for all of that enrichment, there is this document. Some of you may have accessed it before. I created this, which has about 20 pages, all about mental stimulation, really. the different exercises, what you can do, thought processes. It also goes through, there's about 70 different ideas in there, you know, for various different aspects of stimulation that you can create that might suit your environment. And to find that, the best way to do it is just search online for Page Tiger. That's the software I use to build it, Donkey Enrichment, and that should come up with this document. Let me just show you again so you know you're getting the right thing. Page Tiger, Donkey Enrichment. It's a great resource, I think, for ideas, for thought processes. You can download a PDF of each of the exercises. It will tell you, you know, what sort of animals it might suit, or if it's for a bigger group or a smaller group of animals, and the safety considerations that you might have to make when doing them. So there's no reason not to have an endless supply. And if you're just doing mental stimulation, what I would say is you don't need to be doing 10 things a day. You know, get a good 7, 14, if you can, standard exercises that you just rotate, that you bring out every day, and then the next day you do a different one, the next day. So you just go round in a cycle, because then you don't have to think. You know, you can even write in your calendar, do whatever you want to, but just have those sort of standard ones that you know your donkeys will do. If you're doing it, it's like kids at Christmas, you give them a load of toys, they end up playing with the boxes. So you're just changing things, refreshing them. You can see here, you know, people will put out logs. The whole purpose of logs is that they chew the bark off, and then they're no use to the donkeys. Donkeys aren't making fires or picking up logs. It's the bark that's important. So once that bark's gone off the log, time to throw them out, put them in the fire, do whatever you want to do with them, but then get some fresh ones in with some bark. And there are some safety concerns. You know, you need to make sure all of the food and the trees or plants you might use are safe. The Donkey Sanctuary website has some advice on safe plants and trees, but obviously bear in mind regional differences. So let's start excuse me, let's start assessing the needs. Now, this is where I hope you've got a pen and paper ready, because here we go. We're going to do some stuff. Both of these exercises are in that enrichment document. So I'm going to get you to do them now, because when we're in this sort of situation, it's a good starting point. But if you want to find them online and go through them in more detail or do them again, they're in that document that I've just shown you. And we're going to start by looking at a 24-hour time budget. So on your bit of paper, big circle, roughly divide it, if you can, into 24 little segments. It doesn't have to be perfect. I know some of you might be worrying, oh no, I'm not very good at art. Don't worry, just crack on, try and make this little circle, because each of those segments represents an hour in your donkey's day. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to think about what does your donkey actually do? Someone's got a visitor with the dogs. That's cool.
I didn't think you could hear that.
And just start thinking about what does your donkey do during the day. So you've got things like where are they doing their feeding, you know, and I've put in here, maybe in an English kind of system, someone's moved the electric fence. These first 3 things are about them being out grazing after that. Maybe this is about you coming in, you know, mucking out the stall, being there. Same thing in the evening. You know, when do they go for what are they actually doing? Now, you might have to divide some of this up into smaller segments, because they might just be whatever your donkey does during the day. When are they doing their sleeping? When are they resting? Just start to think about how your donkey spends their day. You know, here I've added in a couple of these sort of lines. This is for me putting in a bit of, I suppose I did a little bit of mental stimulation. You can see it doesn't last very long, but I put that in there. That's a couple of exercises. Nice, good, they've had that. You know, this is around us doing things in the morning. Maybe these are sleep, remembering that your donkey probably is only sleeping for a total of 4 to 5 hours a day. and with probably only 20 to 40 minutes of recumbent sleep if they're lucky. So when you begin to look at this, what it's a huge amount of time to fill. And unless you've got, 15 mental stimulation exercises to be bringing out all the time, there's a lot of eating. There's a lot of maybe standing around. There might be some social interaction. There might be watching the neighbors come and go, chasing the dog. It's a good basic exercise to start to get thinking about, how is my donkey filling their time? Often when we do this, people will block out big periods of time for sleeping, and you're like, donkeys don't really sleep like that. There might be a couple of hours at night where they will rest and lie down, but actually they take their sleep in bits throughout the day. So, often people say, well, I don't know. I don't see my donkeys from 10 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning. So what are they doing in that time? And this is particularly relevant if you stable your donkeys, or the donkeys are shut in at night. What are they doing for all of those hours? I always use the equivalent of, if you were locked in the bathroom in your house for 8 hours, how would that feel? What would you do? Would you get slightly bored? For us humans, we can go, oh, well, I'd go to sleep for 8 hours because that's what we do. But donkeys don't do that. If I locked you in the middle of in the bathroom in the middle of the day. So we just started to think in a different way. And you can see the difference immediately between the effects of mental stimulation and enrichment. Fiona says, 8 donkey geldings living together. They play a lot. They watch the neighbor's cattle graze at long distance views. Brilliant. So that's great. If you've got 8 donkeys living together, you are going to have much bigger bouts of play, and that might be throughout the day, or it might be specific times. But if you've only got 2 older donkeys, they may be not doing very much play at all. If you find one donkey wants to play and the other doesn't, we get a bit of a mismatch. But can you see any thoughts? Have you anything you want to put in the chat box that you've just noticed by getting to do this exercise? As I say, return to it, work on it, but it tells us where we might need to begin to produce some more activity. And the reason for this is our donkeys in the wild, they're spending huge amounts of time, 18 hours a day, roughly, walking, browsing. They're spending their time socially interacting. They're not playing with feed balls, or they're not finding banana trails. They're actually just engaged in avoiding predators, staying alert and vigilant, social interaction with other animals, other donkeys, other species. So great if you've got them to watch the neighbor's cattle and things like that. That's very close to what they might be doing next door. Chase is saying, yeah, surprised how much they move around the paddock. I also see them lying down and sleeping. Yeah, standing guard. That's quite normal. Usually you get sort of some degree of somebody standing guard, which is good. Yeah, and again, the nice thing, and again, you can imagine those like donkeys often benefit from the fact we do keep them with goats, or we do keep them with horses, and you do have to be aware that young donkeys can sometimes chase and attack goats and sheep and those sorts of things, but they do all provide mental stimulation, and often horses aren't kept in that same environment. They can be kept in much more sterile environments. The other exercise that you can do is the resource mapping exercise. So on your bit of paper, just draw out your environment for your donkeys. This is a very simple one just to give you an idea, but I've put the stable, they've got some straw in there, here's a yard, they've got a mineral lick, some water over here, here's a paddock, so a couple of trees up here, and there's a bit of strip grazing here. Just draw out your environment. What does it look like? Roughly, doesn't have to be to scale, doesn't have to be perfect, but what this does is start to get you to think about, what is that donkey, what are they living in? They've got a big paddock, where's their access to shade? Because what we're heading towards is starting to think about their natural opportunity to explore things. You know, here in the UK, obviously, grass and overfeeding is a real issue. So we have to restrict their grazing in some way. And traditionally, this is done with a fence. And so they have a little bit. And if you think about your donkey being able to walk from the yard to the fence and back again, that's particularly boring. You know, even if they walk around that bit of paddock, they're not going to get very much exercise. And so we start to think about tracks and different ways of extending that. But this is just a start point to think, okay, what could I put into my environment? And we're going to look at some of that through the rest of this presentation that would create a more natural and a better environment for everything that we want them to do. I love your comment. They are summoning demons, Chase. That's exactly what they're doing. It's a special spell. So this is just the starting point that you're going to say, okay, this one is particularly boring. You know, it does represent what a lot of donkeys live in, but we could begin to change this. We could begin to draw on this. What can I do? Now, one of the things that I'm really aware of when I do this presentation is that people go, oh, I can't do that. Oh, we don't have this. We don't have that. And I absolutely get that. That's why I'm asking you to think of the ideas which fit your environment. That's why I want you to draw your resource map so that you can go, well, if I just change this, or maybe I could do that, or what about if we thought about this? All of those sorts of things fit your environment. It's not about me saying, here's the way to do this, and then you go, oh, well, I can't do that. It doesn't fit my environment. It's very much about the rest of this is you answering these ideas, thinking about it, because, you know, especially if you've got 8 donkeys, we need to think about things, you know, like Jacks and geldings will often need more play opportunities than perhaps Jennies who like more social opportunities. You know, if you've got a younger donkey, they're likely to play more than older donkeys who actually require more rest and perhaps cognitive enrichment where they're just thinking and doing stuff. Your old donkey might not appreciate the effort required to get that feed balancer out of the ball, whereas a young donkey will go crazy for it. Do they play a lot, or are they actually donkeys that come from environment? Maybe they've been rescued, maybe they've had a bad start, and they actually don't like to be exuberant. That's their natural character. They're very calm and quiet. Others want to mouth everything, pick it up, chew it, chase around, play with toys. So you've got to begin to think about this individual nature. If they're older, you know, what surfaces have they got to stand on? Because older donkeys are going to stand around a lot more. So have they got something comfortable? A lot of this comes about choice. Are they naturally nervous or bold? Have they come from an environment which is particularly barren previously? And so they don't know about enrichment and solving problems and puzzles. Great. So Ruth said she's got, you know, property roads around the property that gives donkeys more to look at. Absolutely. But again, that's just one form of enrichment that we want to look at. So you've got your picture. Keep that with you because you're going to work on that now. I'm going to give you some categories and I'm going to ask you some questions. And what I want you to do is be thinking about those categories and be thinking about this natural environment that these donkeys would be in compared to a good old overweight British donkey with too much grass. And we can see the need for this. So let's start thinking about some of these aspects. How can you create more movement in your environment? Look at your resource map, think about your environment. How can, you know, is that about changing gates? Is that about putting up a temporary fence, moving, creating a track system around the outside of the paddock so that they can walk all the way around or chase around, but they actually can't get to the middle bit? If you have a track system, is it about sometimes putting a fence across the track so that they get all the way around and they go, oh, I've got to turn around and go back again? You know, begin to think about how can you create more movement? Can you create more choices of water? You know, often water's like in a bucket, automatic drinker, tick the box. Yep, they've got clean water. But some donkeys like warm water. You know, the donkeys at Donkey Sanctuary often have a warm water source. And even on a warm summer's day, they will prefer warm water to cold water, especially older donkeys. So, you know, can you add some warm water? It doesn't have to be every day if you're in a really warm climate, but can you give them that choice? Can you add herbal tea? Can you just put a bucket of water out in the sun so it changes its taste as the chemicals are broken down? All sorts of things like that. Chase have removed the water from the paddock and they have to leave the paddock, walk through 4 gates and down a laneway to get their water off. Fantastic, you know, and it's a strange thing, but there is that convenience. You know, these 2 donkeys here, they're not walking just to the nearest fence to get their bit of water. They're walking miles to get it. So Chase, absolutely brilliant. And if you've got young, fit donkeys and they know where to go, great, move that water source, create that choice. Can you do anything about heights? You know, do you have an opportunity to be able to build a mound with some spare topsoil? Is there a bit of land that actually, if you move the fence, they could get up on top of and stand up in the breeze a little bit more or see more? You know, some of you are lucky enough, obviously, to have situations where they can look out and see the fence. But for other people, they don't have that. But if you could just raise them a little bit, can you do that? You know, great. Ruth, yeah, they stand on the dam bank. Fantastic. They like that change of height to be able to get a bit more breeze, get away from the flies, be able to see more. And again, like I said, I totally get that not everybody's necessarily going to have those options, but it's challenging you to think about, what could I do? How could I create something where they can do these things? And that might be moving a fence so they've got access to a dam bank, or it might be, as I say, you know, oh, we've been doing a bit of building work and we've got a few tons of soil. Let's build a little mound with a flat top that they can go up and stand on. Do you have any different surfaces that they can stand on? So here, a nice sand pit has been added to the environment, but it could be some rubber mats, it could be some pea gravel. What can you do just to give them different surfaces to stand on, to roll on? Do they have access to the field, the shelter, a laneway, all of those sorts of things? Another donkey, yeah, on the dam bank. A sand round yard, yeah, absolutely. You know, sometimes we have an arena, or we have somewhere we might do training, but it stands empty for 23 hours a day. Why don't we try and give our donkeys access to it, even if it's part of the day? You know, feel free to add in that chat box any ideas, anything you've come up with, anything that you're thinking, oh, actually, maybe I could change this, or any questions as we go along. That'd be really good to make this a bit more interactive. So I've just added in there for you that complexity, the environment, the furniture, the gates. You know, do we always have the same gate open? Can sometimes we just have a different gate open to let them back into the yard or into the fields? It might be that you just put a couple strands of non-electrified electric tape across the center of your paddock. Let me just see if I can go back here to this one here. So if we had a bigger paddock and we're in the environment where grazing isn't so much of an issue, perhaps if we took this line and we put a fence right across the diagonal, what would happen is if the donkey wanted to get to this side, it would just have to walk all the way around to do that. It just creates a little bit of an obstacle for them to have to work. It could just be something that came out 3/4 of the way into the field so that they had to walk around it. You know, you could have a couple of strands so that they got, and I say, just your imagination to begin to make it a little bit more movement, a little bit more work for them to do. So we can look at the sensory element of it. What things can we introduce to the environment that they can smell, feel, and touch. You can see here these donkeys doing a little bit with sensory mental stimulation exercise. That's absolutely fine. Great. We often forget to actually do something that stimulates their sense of smell. So, you know, can we put some different oils occasionally, some lavender or some carrot oil or something on a rag, put it in a ball, like 2 hanging baskets. You don't want the donkey to be able to get to the rag and do that, but something that smells different. Can you increase their opportunity to touch things, such as, can you have a padded post, put some padding around a post so that they can rub on it? Can you put up a scratching point or mount a brush on a wall so that they can scratch on it if they want to? Yeah, great. I mean, there's a nice comment there, Fiona, about those donkeys getting out and being able to look in the narrow spaces and doing all that walk around the float. And those, again, are great opportunities. Nothing wrong with that at all. What I'm suggesting is, how can we create those sorts of environments that they can safely have access to on a more regular basis? Old car wash brushes for sale on Facebook Marketplace. You can install them in the paddock. That's great. Some old rubber curry combs to the fence to scratch on. Yeah, you know, some of these things are going to work for your donkey. Some of them are not, you know, so look around for different ideas. You can buy special rubber mats that have got little rubber points on that the donkey can rub up against. Again, you can use field pillows that go around the posts and stuff like that. Fresh herbs, herbal tea. Anybody give their donkeys herbal tea? You know, get a bit of herbal tea, mix up a brew, put it in some water in a bucket, so that they can have that as a different flavor, as a different smell. You can even go now, there's some work on scent training if you're really interested on that, getting donkeys, horses to be able to follow scents and trails and be able to even track people like dogs might do. May not want to go that far. Brilliant. Fiona's ahead a little bit there. Perfect. You know, those herbs growing through the hedge so that they can nibble them without destroying them when they grow through. And we can deliberately actually plant herbs outside the fence line that will grow through so that we can use that. But even cutting things like nettles, gorse and that sort of stuff, it's all prickly, it has a sense, that sort of thing. Even just doing training where you've added in the sense of smell, the antiseptic or the smell of the vet, or you've asked the farrier to wear an apron or a t-shirt for a couple of days or a day when he's been doing work, and then you take that and use it in your training. That's still stimulating that sense of smell. So because our sense of smell is really so poor, I think we often forget this sense. It is really something that they take a lot of pleasure in. I've added in their auditory, like, you know, the music, and some of you have always mentioned roads and traffic and stuff like that. But yeah, maybe sometimes have the radio on if you want to. If you've got an issue with fireworks in your area, maybe get a fireworks CD and begin to use that to get them used to fireworks for the right type of time. But don't forget this touch. We're getting away from food. We're just thinking, you know, is there somewhere nice to roll? What are their choices to rub on? What can they do that gives them that sense of that? I'm hoping you're coming up with some ideas. I hope you're stealing some ideas. I hope you're thinking about how this just engages the different senses that they might have and might be needing to use. Social contact. Now, this is often an easier one for donkeys, harder for horses. Great, Lucy. I'm glad you got a big list. That's what we want to achieve, is say, try stuff, find out what works, what they like, what they don't like. Yeah, nailing old brushes. Some stuff is really cheap stuff. Just look, there's an old brush head that's been hanging around there that hasn't got put back on the thing. Let's just stick it on the fence in the right place and see if they can do that. Social contact, important. You can see these two young donkeys want to play. But that's not always what they want. Oh, hang on, I've gone the wrong way. I've lost my. Here we go. Contact to be with a friend or a group. That's often easier with donkeys. So donkeys do get a better deal for this. When we're talking about horses, often they are limited on their social contact. And that's a big problem. I think donkeys really do benefit from the fact we know that we should keep them in pairs, and they often are together 24 hours a day. But remember, you're also part of their social contact. And also remember that sometimes they don't like every member in the group and they want some space and some peace and quiet. So how can you make sure that they have spaces to get away from each other? Especially older donkeys, you've got older and younger donkeys. How is it managed so that those older donkeys can go and rest without being annoyed by a couple of younger donkeys who want to play? They're not disturbed by everybody walking in and out, going to the feeder, those sorts of things. Just important to begin to think in that way. Some of you, again, you know, if you're lucky enough to live where they can watch the neighbors or they can watch people going up and down the street, the road, that's great, especially if those people can't get access to overfeed your animals. That's a different topic, but really important. Excuse me. Just checking here. Yeah. And again, Christine's put some nice stuff in the chat box about what you do. The challenge for all of this is find something that works for you. You know, some people are like, I'm not there during the day. I can't move them around. I can't change them in. If you can, fantastic. That would be a lot of people's aspirations. If you can't, okay, that's cool. That doesn't mean to say we can't do things that we're talking about now to create that enriched environment where we're not there. Yeah, you can. I love these ideas, the things that are happening. Sometimes, you know, environment really makes it a lot easier. If you've got Ruth there saying that, you know, they love it when horses ridden along the road. I'm not sure the horses always love it when they suddenly meet donkeys, but it's just thinking about what fits your environment. Some environments make it easier, some are a little bit tougher, and you just have to work a little bit harder with it. Nutritional. Now, okay, so what food is available? How is it delivered? And how can the animal access different types of food? Now, we all know that feeding donkeys and the propensity for them to get overweight. I think most of you will probably have an advantage in that you don't necessarily have this wet, lush green grass that we have here in the UK all the time, where we're constantly trying to restrict the grazing and give them something else, you know, our straw diet with a little bit of a top up of some hay or some grass. But when we're even delivering those things, and one of the common things I see in behavioral issues, people contact me, is they don't have access to that high fiber food. So even if you've got a pasture and they can wander around, how many other sources of high fiber food can you use? Maybe it is some straw if you can access some barley straw, or maybe oat straw, wheat straw if you want, although we tend to, wheat straw is lower in energy and value. It's less palatable. Oat straw is a bit higher in energy, so it'll give them a few more calories. So that's why we tend to go for barley straw if you can access it. But, you know, a bit of hay in small amounts put in to a slow feeder of some description or a net. Then that enrichment document I talked about, lots of ideas in there, hey, just slowing down how they eat. Can you spread it out? You know, it's very easy to go, here's your feeder, you know, here's a straw in the straw feeder. That's great. People say to me, oh, but Ben, they're eating this barley straw in the bed. I'm like, cool, that's fine too. People, but they're not supposed to. No, that's horses that we don't like eating barley straw out their beds. It would be fine for horses too. But if your donkey's eating the straw out the bed, that's fine. You know, it's creating those different ideas where they've got that opportunity. Logs, trees that they can actually access. Can you plant or give them access to a gorse bush. Can you chop a bit of gorse off and hang it up so they can try and pick at it and get pieces off it? Can you cut nettles and hang them up for them to, when they're dried a little bit? Can you give them access to some nettles? Can you give them access to thistles that they can use? Yeah, so Pat's there, give them some late cut hay. It's almost like straw, so and give them more barley straw and a small hole hay nets. Yeah, you know, and again, hay nets are great to slow that down if you need to. Smaller amounts spread out over further distances. There's some great new products on the floor, because you want your donkeys to eat from the floor if you can, rather than with their head up, because that can create issues. So the more we can get them to eat there. Yeah, blackberries, brambles. Yeah, there's great ideas. They will obviously, if you let them into woods and trees, have a lot more access, but beware, they will strip the bark off logs and trees. And also things like stone fruit are not good for donkeys and access to that. There is technically in some of the stones derivative of arsenic and stuff like that. So you wouldn't want them crunching on the stones and eat that sort of stuff. I thought gorse was poisonous to stock. It's very high in vitamin C. I'm not aware of it being poisonous. It's worth checking out, but certainly something we've always recommended, and certainly on the moors here in the UK, most stock have access to some form of gorse and pick at it. Where do you find what trees are safe? There is a list on the Donkey Sanctuary website on feeding donkeys and about safe feeds and poisonous plants and those sorts of things. But generally, you know, your beech, ash, hazel, sycamore is okay. Not the, you don't want necessarily the seeds, obviously, because that can cause some problems, but they can have that. Those normal branches. I've seen donkeys eat all sorts of holly, various things like that. Generally, you want to avoid the evergreens, but the more traditional plants, avoid things like oak and acorns. Yeah, gorse Pat is a weed. When I was in New Zealand and in Australia, yeah, trying to get rid of it all the time. Good. Chase has checked the poisonous plants book to horses and gorses and in it. But if you're concerned, you know, just do a little search on the internet, have a check it out. Again, Ursula's there saying winter, we stable them overnight in the morning, all the straw was eaten. Yeah, you're thinking about that time budget again. You got 6, 8, 10 hours. If I'm running out of things to eat, I'm going to get bored and do other things, chew the stable, chew each other. You know, how can we slow that down? How can we make sure that we are trying to give them different things? Can we hide some stuff in the straw? Can we do a little bit of hiding some pieces of food, carrot? You know, one of the things I like to do is get some browse. So we'll cut off hazel twigs with the leaves on and we'll scatter that and put it in places high and low and move it around. Yeah, so lots of nice ideas there from Fiona. And yeah, anything prickly, they love getting around. I mean, the prickly stuff is great because it gives them that stimulation, the lips, they're trying to get the right bit. You know, you're really making them think. And that's really a lot of this basis is trying to get people to think that we almost give our donkeys a life of luxury. They've got everything they want. Here's a big pile of food. Here's your water. You know, here's a friend. But actually, it's very boring after a while. It's nice, but what am I going to do? So, you know, giving them something prickly, making it a little bit harder for them, making them having to search for it, is just helps them mentally. It keeps them active, keeps them thinking. It helps them to avoid other behavioral issues. You know, simple things. If you want to go back to the enrichment, you know, banana. Or you could put this with no sugar apple sauce. So it could go into these holes. The donkeys have to lick it out and try and get hold of it and those sorts of things. Yeah, hazelnut trees, great. Chase, absolutely. Yeah, roses. Roses rings a bell that might not be the best thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking if it's in your garden of eating the roses, that could be bad. But maybe if you maybe Chase, you want to have a little look in your book on and just check for roses again. Oh, roses are okay, cool. Unless they're in someone's garden and you've just killed their prize rose plant, then it's not so okay. But yeah, just, and again, you know, do check it out, but don't get stuck. We get very much stuck in this is what we feed donkeys. You know, look around, see what can be changed. With a fence at the sanctuary on the training center, and there was a long fence, and there was literally a natural curve in the hedge where the donkeys would just eat everything they could reach through it. So there's a great opportunity here, and this is where you start to plant some herbs that grow through the fence, or you create a patch in the middle of the field where they will grow out through, or you can go in, cut some through it out. Yeah, great, Ruth. Banana skins. Bananas are an interesting one, and banana skins, great. Potassium, that. Don't overdo them, because you can affect the potassium calcium balance in the donkey's diet. So, you know, they're occasional treats, and this rotation of them. So, you know, giving them once a week, twice a week is fine, but you wouldn't do it every single day for them. Just to say, while we're talking about it, treats versus rewards, enrichment versus training. So treats we tend to talk about are enrichment. So we're throwing things out. We are giving them scatter feed, you know, handful of high fiber nuts, throw it out. Maybe if they've got a yard, some high fiber sort of chaff that can be sprinkled around the yard that they've got to pick up. Those are treats. Those are enrichment. I often see people get into the problem. They want to give their donkey a carrot or an apple from their hand every day. You know, or he always gets a bit of bread, was one I used to hear a lot of. And you sort of say, well, okay, that's great. But if he has a piece of bread every day, that's 365 slices of bread, which is a fair few loaves if we put it in a pile every year. It's far better to take those treats and turn them into enrichment. Throw them out there, scatter them around, make them work for them, hide them, make them think about it. Even though we don't quite get the pleasure of, oh, look, he's come running up because he wants his carrot. Far better to spend 20 minutes for them looking for bits of carrot that you have sliced up. And again, carrots, just think about chopping them lengthways, not into circles, because that's a choking hazard, and don't feed them whole if you possibly can. What was done with the paprika? Literally just spread on the ground. So when they were in the stables or whatever, the grooms went out, put a little patch out there, and let them out, and they come out, and of course it's a strong smell, and they smell it. And again, it gets a bit interesting where you start to find out what do they like, what don't they like. That you can explore lavender, basil oil, those sorts of things. And just literally a tablespoon. It doesn't need to be very much if you're doing those sorts of herb kind of activities with the sense of smell, because again, it's the novelty of these things that is important. And if you do them all the time, they kind of like, oh yeah, I know what that is. So moving it around, moving it to different places, and not doing it too often, but having different oils or different herbs that you can just take out from literally from the kitchen, sprinkle a few around, is really good. And that brings in your sort of food trails, where you create a trail around the barn of different smells, and a little treat here and a bit there and a piece of enrichment over there, and they can sort of go round. Lick mats and snuffle mats, you know, these are treats. So you see them a lot in dogs. You can get them for horses. This is where you have a mat that has lots of, it's a silicone mat, has lots of dimples and bumps and shapes on it to make it difficult to get off. Little bit of no sugar apple sauce on there, or mushed up carrot, or even just some high fiber nuts that you've soaked and you just want to spread out. You put that out on the yard, and they can lick at it, and they can try and get all the bits off of that particular surface. The snuffle mats are also where you hide a treat in I'm going to say, like, it's like have a look for dogs. Have a look for dogs on snuffle mats, and you can see it. I've not really used them too successfully for equines, but they are available, and you can get them searching and using their noses for small bits of treat that are in there. Hopefully you're starting to think about this. So here you can see, here's all these carrots being thrown out rather than given. Training, this is where we use our rewards. So it's payment for something that the donkey does. Food rewards are fine to use in training. We just have to be able to control how they are used and make sure the animal understands the way in which they're used. So they have to learn about how to get food rewards, and that's about teaching them that mugging doesn't work. And the one thing that I would definitely say, you know, it doesn't cause food to bite. It's the bad timing of food. So if your donkey comes up and nuzzles you and sort of goes, oh, and you go, good boy, here you go. He's going to learn that nuzzling you and nibbling you gets food. If they come up and stand calmly and quietly and they get food, that's what they'll learn, gets food. So be very careful around the use of food, that there isn't a miscommunication. Yeah, absolutely, Christine, perfect. Every person I've ever cooked for has different likes and dislikes. Sounds like donkeys may be quite finicky with some ingredients, or their age may have a lot to do with it. Yeah, absolutely. Senses of smell and taste change as they age. So it is a little bit of trial and error. Don't just, oh, they don't like, you know, smell stimulation, just they didn't like that one. So, you know, you get, and it adds a bit of enrichment to your life with your donkeys, thinking of different things, trying different things, learning, you know, oh, they really like this and they don't like that. And one donkey likes a particular thing, but the other doesn't. Those are all, it really lets us see into the donkey's world. It lets us explore who they are and how they perceive the world. You just be aware when you're training, again, you know, there's a lot of opportunity for very sugary treats. Use these in very small quantities. These, you know, this particular mint here, great for feeding. If you've got to get tablets into your donkey, because many tablets will fit right in the middle of that hole right there, and you can just feed a mint and the animal never knows it has been medicated. Ginger biscuits, you know, great if you've got a donkey that's reluctant to be wormed, put the bit of worm in between two pieces of ginger biscuit. But don't use too much of them because of the high sugar content and all those sorts of aspects. Use your carrots, your apples, but make sure they're safe. Remember that if you're using food for training, it increases motivation to try, which is a great thing, unless you want them to do things like stand still and be calm. So if you want walking, food and using food rewards might well be a good thing to do. But if you want standing still and being calm, scratches, and with the scratches might be better to use. So, and again, they might be suitable for some animals. You might have to train other behaviors first, such as calmness around food or food defensiveness. So if you've got an animal that's particularly values food or novelty food and becomes more the one that's going to rip the hole in your pocket to get the food or become chasing everybody else off, you may need to do some work first around food before you do training with it. It does increase the capacity for learning and work for many animals, because it is so motivating for them, because most donkeys have quite a limited environment without all of the things that we've been talking about now. So that's why it's so motivating for them to have food rewards. But there can be some drawbacks, as I mentioned here. If you want to train a calm behavior, then maybe not using food would be better. Using scratches and strokes and things like that might be more suitable. But again, it depends on the animal, depends on the situation. If you've got a particularly nervous animal that won't let you touch them, then maybe all you can do is throw them a piece of carrot on the floor to start with, because touching and scratches aren't rewarding from a human. But then it might change as they develop in their training. A little bit about suitable treats here. I do have this little bit here. Moderation, 1 or 2 leaves. So lettuce leaves, swede, turnips, grapes, bananas, pears, and parsnips. treats that should be fed with caution. So again, things like you can buy dried carrot and apple cubes and rings. They're quite high in sugar because they've been dried. Polos, ginger biscuits, as I've mentioned, not suitable treats. So don't feed any potatoes, brassicas, Brussels sprouts, broccoli and cauliflower, onions, garlic, leeks, that sort of thing. Try and avoid the animal products that are contained in certain biscuits and fats, cod liver oil, and other oils of animal origin. It's not natural for them to eat those sorts of things. If you really want to add oil to a donkey's diet, maybe research flax oil or things like that. Chocolate. We did have some donkeys that came into the donkey sanctuary with chocolate fetish. They were given Belgian chocolate every night, a couple of cubes, and we had to wean them off gradually to make sure that they didn't get hyperlipemia from the sudden change. And these, when we're talking about enrichment, the sort of liquid style hanging treats, they're very high in sugar and molasses and things like that, really bad for them. So just avoid those. Occasionally, if it's something that you need to use for distraction for the farrier for a couple of minutes, maybe, if you can't do it any other way, but don't just give them free access to it. Not going to waste my chocolate on anything else. Yeah, I think that's a good metaphor for making sure the donkeys don't eat the chocolate or anybody else in your house. Never put food or have food rewards in your pocket. I would always say, have a bum bag, fanny pack if you're in the States, whatever you're calling it, or a separate vest that you wear if you're using and doing food training, so that it's a very clear signal when food is available from you and when it isn't. And that way the animal can be more relaxed. Okay, let me stop that share and answer that question. Cardboard boxes to eat. Yeah, okay. Cardboard, they often like to tear up cardboard boxes. One of the exercises in that resource I showed is that we have cardboard boxes and then put things inside, maybe hay and or straw, and then hide stuff in there, and they rip open the box and do all that. Just be aware that donkeys will eat cardboard, and sometimes that's not a good thing, especially if they eat too much or if they're older donkeys and can't chew it up properly. So just monitor that. Licorice, is this okay as an occasional treat? Well, I like a bit of licorice occasionally. I think they all do say on the packet to avoid excessive consumption because it does have a laxative effect. So donkeys would be no different. And it's just looking at also, whether that's a natural product or whether they've added any sugar or anything like that to it. I think it's just great to be even thinking about these things. Can we add a little bit of this? Can we try a little bit of that? Do research, ask some people. Only in moderation, of course, with the cardboard, but I love a box of mineral that comes in. Yeah, absolutely. It's great. Most, especially young donkeys, throw out that cardboard box, let them tear it up. It gives you a bit of exercise picking all the pieces back up again, which is great for your mental stimulation. So really, this is just what I'm trying to say is look at your environment, think about these different categories and go, what can I do to change things? If I've got toys, can I change the toys? Have a toy box and don't just put the toys out all the time, because the welly gets boring. Have a welly, the next day they've got a rope, the day after that they're going to have a football to chew on. If you've got donkeys that like that, the rubber bucket toy, just be thinking about this rotation, renewing, refreshing, keep them clean. The number of places I go where people have got, oh yes, he's got a toy but he doesn't use it, and you look at it and it's been rolling around in the donkey poo, and I'm like, well, I wouldn't put my nose on it, so why would they? So again, it might be you got to just clean those toys. Get two wellies lost in the paddock somewhere. Yeah, absolutely. And again, you just be keeping an eye on those things. Are they tearing them to bit and eating them, or are they not? So it's just this thinking process. I've got a couple of old rubber mats. Can I put them out where they stand under the shade of a tree and just give them a different surface and just see, do they prefer standing on that softer surface, or don't they? Choice is the question here, really. Choice is about saying, giving them options. Oh yeah, see, Chase is saying maybe the snake's living in the welly boot. Yeah, okay. Be careful with that then, everybody. But just choice. Think about the choices, the options. Like I said with water, here's water, tick, they've got water. But can we change the flavor? Can we change the temperature? Can we change the location? Can we just put a bucket in a different place occasionally to cause them to go out and have a look and see what's this different? It's just a thought process for us, which is mentally stimulating. It's not possible to do everything, but build a list, build the idea that when you're not there, can they be doing things that are keeping them active? There are some things there. Lucy said about signs or posters in their shelter. I guess if you put up posters, that probably pull them off and eat them. But yeah, novel things. The problem is that they very quickly become used to them and they lose their stimulating value. One of the things you can do is put up a mirror. So you can get horse mirrors, which are perspex placed. So they're not glass, they're safer, but you need to make them movable, because if you just put them up, the donkeys will be very stimulated for a while and then they get used to it and that's fine. But if those move around the environment or appear and reappear, they maintain their stimulating properties. Square carpet, great to put their hay on in the winter, keep it out of the mud. Yep, definitely. Keith, herbal tea bags into the donkey's trough tomorrow. Oh dear, there's a terrible herbal tea bag war going on. Absolutely. Just play with it, see what they like. Don't ask me which type of herbal tea. I'd start with chamomile and peppermint or something like that. But go, there's if they like licorice, maybe a licorice tea bag that you soak a bit of hay in, or you put it in their water and let them have licorice and see what they like. This is part of the excitement for you, is what do my donkeys actually like? I've never offered them all of these things. So let's find out. Let's make a list. Let's keep a chart that tells us what they do and don't like. That's very noble of you, Chase. Chase has given up her pomegranate tea bags because she doesn't like those. Just play with it. I just think there's a lot more excitement for us as donkey owners and keepers to be had from seeing what we can enrich and what we can do and what our donkeys like and what they don't like. And remember, just because they don't like something this week, it doesn't mean in a month's time or 2 months' time they won't like it again. So again, don't, you just like kids, you feed them stuff, they go, I don't like that. And then you go, oh, they don't like avocado. And that's it for their life. Whereas, if you introduce it again a month later and a month later and 3 months later and 6 months later, they go, oh, I quite like avocado. So don't just give up on the first time. Just vary it, try it out, give them a few options, change it. Hopefully, giving you loads of ideas. You should have a list. Of ideas for enrichment. Food is obviously the easiest one to do, but think about how you feed and where, and can you make it more difficult. In that book, the resource there, I took 2 hanging baskets and just cable tied them together, and you can fill that up with hay and treats and then free hang it so that they can't get to it very easily. You can do the same thing with a weed net. There's an exercise in there with a small whole hay net. Pick your brambles or your gorse or whatever it is you're going to put in there and let them try and pick at it and pull through it. But try to also think about this environment enrichment where you just change the gates and move the feeders and all those sorts of things. Cool. Hopefully that's given you lots of ideas. It's given you a way of kind of researching it. Go back to those exercises on the resource mapping, see what you can change, see what you can build more of, and create, put a training area in the middle of the paddock that's fenced off with things that are in there, flags, bunting, have a paper bag or a dustbin bag or a balloon tied to the fence now and again. These things will all help with training, but they also provide stimulation. If you've got someone gives you a helium balloon for your birthday, great, take it, put it just outside the paddock so the donkeys can't get a hold of it, but suddenly this floating object in the air will cause them some mental stimulation. Yeah, so physical enrichment, absolutely, that's what we've been talking about with this. Can we just get a scratch, an old brush, but on the fence, can we get a purpose-built one? You know, there are some great ones that they have for cattle, dairy cattle, that are on a spring that can be put up. Can we just change the walkways? Can we create a track system? Can we give them access to a walk around the woods? Can we give them a tree that they can shelter under, or they can get in the shade? So they've got choice between sun and shade. All of those sorts of things, the mounds on the ground, you know, try to focus away from just food, focus on the physical. But the physical obviously will be there all the time. So it's like, it takes a bit more effort, takes perhaps a little bit more cost sometimes, but then that's stimulating them, you know, 23 hours a day. Whereas your food rewards and that mental, the stimulation that I talked about, the mental stimulation at the start, is just there for very short periods. So a mixture of all of those will help your donkey have a more enriched environment. Cool, good, Lucy. I'm glad we've given you some ideas. And again, you know, if you've got lots of ideas, if you create stuff, if you think, oh, this really works, do send them up. I've always said that there is on the back of that enrichment form a bit of a document that you can fill in and send back and say, actually, do you want to add this to the list? Or we found this works really well. And I'm more than happy to add all of those things to the list as well. So I'm glad. Yep, great. Lots of ideas that I can try out and recommend. And I really hope you enjoyed trying them out. Do they like sounds, music? Yeah, they do. They do seem to like sounds. I've had people tell me that they like harp music, but that's just because that's what they played. So yeah, I'm guessing if you play a musical instrument, try it. If you, again, it's that thing. It's like saying all donkeys like classical music. You know, I'm pretty sure some donkeys are going to be soothed by classical music. Others might like rock and pop, but just play with it. Just having the radio on now and again. Again, the problem is if you just leave the radio on all day, every day, it just becomes background drone, and it's not interesting. So it's that change. It's the opportunity. And if they're shut in the stable and you leave the radio on all night, you know, think about the fact they might not like that, and then they're stuck and they can't get away from it. So again, choices, ability to choose. Do I want to listen, be close to the radio? Do I want to be further away from it? Any other questions before we get finished, or played YouTube videos of donkeys braying and it set them off? Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, I've always been tempted to produce a braying CD so that, you know, you could occasionally have different brays and things like that. And I think that would be a cool thing. Record a few donkey brays and then play it back every now and again and make them think there's some other donkeys around. All of this is stimulation. There's no end to sort of imagination of what you could try and see what they work, depending on your individual donkeys, how old they are, how young they are. And remember, you're part of their environment and their stimulation as well. So any time you spend with them, grooming, training, handling, walking are all brilliant ways of enriching their day. Good. Any more questions? Any thoughts, comments? Brilliant, Fiona. Great. If they've got lots of variety of natural hillside and shelters and shade and plants and views, that's fantastic. Safety, yeah, Christine, you know, you do have to think about safety. Can they eat something they shouldn't? Can they get stuck in something they shouldn't? That's why, again, you know, on the enrichment resource, I've kind of added a little bit of safety thought to that. But I think most of it is just thinking about it before you do it and then putting it out there. And there's some good books and good resources on toxic plants for equines, and the great forums and things now. And you've got access to each other to be able to go, actually, my donkey's eating this, or I'm going to feed my donkey that. Is that okay? Just check it out. It doesn't have to be overly onerous. I've personally not really come, just trying to think, I don't think I've ever come across somebody going, oh, I've enriched my donkey's environment and they got their head stuck on a feed ball or anything like that. The issues come when you've got 8 donkeys and you put 1 feed ball in. That might cause a problem. You know, if you're going to use a feed ball, it probably needs to be 8 feed balls spread over the whole paddock so that they can all get a bit. So it's resource guarding. Oh, see, I knew as soon as I said that, someone would tell me, look, okay, Fiona, you're right. That's tragic. A donkey that ate bunting in its paddock and it died. It's bizarre. I wouldn't, yeah, I can't imagine donkeys, but I've seen them go up and sniff it and do all that sort of thing. I can't imagine why you'd want to eat it if you had lots of other choices of good enrichment. But yeah, good tip. Keep it up out of their height. So it's a stimulus, it's a visual stimulus, not an edible one. And that's why I say like helium balloons or balloons, you know, these are sometimes things you can put out while you're there or just outside their paddock that provide this visual stimulation or the sense of smell, things like that. Good. Any final questions or thoughts? I hope we've given you lots of ideas. Hope it's been useful. I'd love to see any pictures of things or feedback in the future. Yeah, put out tires. One of the things, like wheelbarrow tires are pretty cool because they can pick them up and play with them and hit each other with them. Or those rubber tire, I don't know if you get them, the recycled, what they call them, trug buckets that often are used for feed. They've got handles so they can pick them up and pull them, often like playing tug of war. Motorcycle tires, yeah, same thing. Chase, sort of smaller and easier for them to get hold of. Brilliant. I'm loving all of these ideas. I think they're great. Any other general questions or anything? Used to have handles. Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Christine. That's kind of you. Good. Anything else, Chase, you want to ask? Anybody want to ask or anything before we sign off? And you go back to your evening and I get started in my day. How do you teach a donkey to eat branches? I think, yeah, I don't know. You put them out there.
We had somebody come to visit donkeys, and I got hazelnut branches because I was like, oh, this would be a real treat for them to have the hazelnut branches. And mine got straight into it, and the visiting donkeys were like, what do we even do with this? Like, because it wasn't easy to eat. So
and that's really interesting. Again, you know, and it just shows if you give those donkeys an enriched environment, they cope with more things and they do more things, just like, you know, children, and they've showed in scientific experiments, if you bring an animal up an enriched environment, it has more neural pathways in their brain than if you bring it up in a very sterile environment. And again, it's just changing it with the twigs. It's actually maybe feeding them from the hand to start with. Or cut them up, put them into something that they are normally eating. So you put them in the hay and stuff so they find them and smell them and do that. And do exactly what you've done. If you've got donkeys that do eat them, pretty soon they will start to follow their lead and do that.
because yeah, mine have learned how to put their hoof on one end and like drag their teeth along to get the.
Yep. And that's exactly the stimulation you look for. They're having to figure stuff out. You know, we tend to solve all our animals' problems rather than going, well, you figure out how to get hold of that course or get hold of that hazel twigs. And I think that's exciting. It's a pleasure, Stacey. Thank you. And yeah, as I say, send me some pictures, send me some feedback on things you've done or I want to add to the resource. Cool. Well, good night. Thank you very much indeed. Sorry about my late appearance, Chase. Genuinely couldn't, for some reason, get everything started.
Better late than never, Ben. Better late than never.
Indeed. I was, yeah. Fantastic. Thank you all very much. Have a great weekend. You're already there. Look at that. I've got a little bit still to do before we get there. And the sun is shining here in the UK today. So, blimey, we'll make the most of that.
Enjoy.
Take care. Bye for now.
Thanks a lot, Ben. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.